This will be a short video showing how to do a brake pad swap on the Yamaha FZ-07. Alright, so some tools you'll need: 13mm socket and socket wrench, preferably a torque wrench, which I didn't use, but you should if you're doing this. Needle nose pliers, a screwdriver, brake cleaner, protective gloves, and bike stands if you've got them. Alright, so I've got everything set up here. I've already done the brakes on the left side of the bike. Now I'm going to do the ones on the right. Putting this glove on to protect from the brake cleaner later. This is the bottom of the brake unit, and on top there's a clip, and it's held in place by a pin, which is itself held in place by two cotter pins. These are the brake pads that I'm going to use to replace the ones that are currently on the bike. These are just EBC brake pads that I got off of Amazon. And so I'm going to take these needle nose pliers, I'm going to go in on the back of this clip, and I'm going to remove the cotter pins. There's one, there's two, and then all you have to do is push this pin out. For that I'm going to use a screwdriver. Anything would work really. I could probably even use those needle nose pliers if I wanted to. Now once I do this, the brake pads will slide right out as one did in the process here. Those are the old ones. That is the clip on top. And now what I'm going to do is take my brake cleaner, spray it around in here, get rid of some of the gunk, both the grease and bits of metal that are coming off the brake pads as they're worn down. Brake dust. So it says not to get this stuff on your hands or on your skin. That's why I'm wearing gloves here on my left hand. So I'm just going to spray around inside. You'll see the gunk come off of it. I did get some on my skin. It didn't really do much, but it was only a small amount, so I would still recommend wearing some kind of protective glove when you do this. Okay, that looks fairly clean. I'm now going to take a rag, and wipe off some of the excess, clean up the pin a little bit that was holding the clip in place on the top because it had a little gunk on it. Not that that really matters, but while I was there. So clean out the inside of the brake unit. And there was a fair amount of brake dust in there that got wiped out by the brake cleaner. The bike only has a little over 2,000 miles on it, so it wasn't that bad. Now what I'm doing here is just pressing in the brake calipers. So they were pretty extended, given how worn down, or not that worn down, but given that the old brake pads were a little worn down, the calipers were a little more extended, so I'm just going to push them out a bit on both sides to make it easier to get the new brake pads in and to put it on the bike. Now one thing to remember, once you do this, the fluid inside of the brakes is going to be a little out of whack. So after you get everything reinstalled, bolted back up, you really need to pump the brakes quite a few times before it gets back to where it needs to be. So make sure you do that before you go out and ride the bike, because you pull in the brakes the first time, it's not going to do anything. And that could come as quite a surprise if you're wanting to stop. Okay, now we're going to reinstall everything, starting with the clip. So here I'm just figuring out which direction the clip needs to be oriented once the unit is back on the bike. And so what you want is for the fat end of the clip, there's a wider end and a thinner end. You want the wider end to be facing up towards the bike and the thinner end to be facing down towards the ground as the unit is, once the unit is attached to the bike. So here it looks upside down from what I just said, but this is the correct orientation. Because once the brake unit is reattached, that then part will be pointing towards the ground and the wider end will be pointing up towards the bike. Okay, so now we're just going to install the pads. The little eyelets go up because that's where the pin goes through. You want to make sure you have your pads facing inward. You don't want that lattice metal work part facing inward. Alright. So the trick here is to feed the pin through the eyelet on the brake pad and then push down on this part of the clip on the thinner end so that the pin will slide through a little spring action part on the clip so that it stays in place. I made this look harder than it actually is. It's not really that hard. Okay, that's in place. Spread my pads apart a little bit so I can put it back on the bike. Only thing left to do is put the cotter pins back in on the main pin. And I think everything lined up already. Yes. There's one pin on. Two pins on. So the brake unit is now reassembled. Now it just needs to be put back on the bike. Here I'm just twisting the pins and the cotter pins so it's less likely that they would ever catch on something. Not that they ever will. You don't have to do that. The brake, just make sure that your two pads are wide enough apart that they can slide over the rotor, so the rotor goes between them. And now I'm just going to reattach everything. Reattaching. Alright, so I'm just going to snug these bolts up by hand, and then you want to use a properly calibrated torque wrench to tighten each bolt there to 29 feet-pound torque. What I'm about to pick up is not a torque wrench, so do not use that. And once you do that, you're all set. That's how you swap the brake pads on an FZ-07.